candlelit dinner becomes the beginning of emotional collapse when Bruno Mars sees Rosé with Cha Eunwoo. Jealousy, secrets, and irreversible choices collide. "Don't touch her hand," Bruno Mars whispered hoarsely, his voice drowned by the clink of crystal glasses, as his eyes caught Cha Eunwoo's fingers hovering dangerously close to Rosé's beneath the candlelight. The scent of red wine, warm butter, and freshly fallen rain blended into something deceptively beautiful, far too beautiful for the pain that suddenly crushed Bruno's chest. He stood behind the restaurant's tall glass window, his black suit damp from the drizzle, his breathing heavy as if every breath demanded extra courage. From where he stood, he could see everything clearly. Rosé's soft yet genuine laughter, the warmth and attentiveness in Cha Eunwoo's gaze, and the distance between them that was far too intimate to be called coincidence. Rosé didn't see him, or perhaps she chose not to. Bruno wasn't sure which thought hurt more. Something long buried stirred inside him. A familiar fear resurfaced, the fear of being left behind, of never being enough, of every love song he had ever written being nothing more than a one-sided confession. Bruno was a man who commanded stages, who held thousands of eyes in the palm of his hand, yet that night he was defeated by a small dinner table and two people who looked painfully perfect together. His hands clenched, nails biting into his palms until it hurt. An old habit, one that always appeared when he lost control. He closed his eyes, but the image only sharpened. Memories flashed, Rosé asleep on his studio couch with headphones still on, her laughter when he played the wrong chord, the long silence after their last argument that was never truly resolved. Cha Eunwoo leaned slightly forward, saying something that made Rosé smile wider. That smile was different. Bruno knew it too well. It wasn't the polite smile reserved for colleagues. It was the smile that appeared when someone felt safe. A dull thudding echoed in Bruno's ears. Whether from the jazz music inside the restaurant or his own chest, he couldn't tell. He knew this jealousy wasn't just about love. It was about pride, about old wounds that never healed, about a promise he once made to himself to never be the man who arrived too late. At the table, Rosé felt something shift. She glanced toward the window instinctively, her chest warming for no clear reason. But all she saw was the reflection of city lights and rain tracing thin lines across the glass. She turned back to Cha Eunwoo, trying to focus on his story, even as her thoughts drifted somewhere she refused to name. Cha Eunwoo was not naive. He sensed Rosé's emotional distance, the hesitation hidden between her laughs. He knew his name often appeared in the same whispered conversations as Bruno Mars within the industry. Yet something about Rosé made him stay. Her quiet sadness, her fragile strength, her ability to keep smiling while the past kept knocking. In the end, Bruno walked away. His shoes struck the wet pavement with an uneven rhythm. He didn't enter the restaurant, didn't make a scene, didn't demand or reclaim anything. He knew that if he did, he would lose more than just Rosé. He would lose himself. That night, he chose to leave, carrying burning jealousy and unanswered questions with him. In his silent apartment, Bruno sat before the piano. His fingers trembled as they touched the first key. The note that emerged was broken, unpolished, yet honest. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't writing for the world. He was writing for his own pain, for the fear he finally faced, for a love that might have already changed shape. Meanwhile, Rosé returned home with an unsettled heart. In her room, she kicked off her shoes and sank onto the floor, her back resting against the bed. She knew the dinner had been simple, almost meaningless. Yet the sudden weight of guilt made her realize that something between her and Bruno remained unfinished, something silence alone could never resolve. The rain had stopped, but the city was still breathing wet asphalt and neon when Bruno pushed open the door of the recording studio, his voice already echoing through the empty hallway before he realized he was speaking out loud. "You saw her," he muttered, as if the walls might answer. "You saw her smiling like that." The studio lights flickered on, revealing the familiar chaos of cables, instruments, and half-written lyrics scattered like evidence of a life perpetually unfinished. Bruno dropped his jacket onto a chair and ran a hand through his hair, packing. The melody he'd started earlier refused to settle. Every note bent back toward the same image, Rosé's laugh, soft and unguarded, offered to someone else. His phone vibrated. A message from Rosé. "We need to talk." The words sat there, calm and deceptively polite, and somehow that hurt more than anger would have. Bruno stared at the screen, jaw tight, before typing back. "Now." Across the city, Rosé stood by her window, phone in hand, heart racing. She had replayed the dinner in her mind 100 times since she got home. Cha Eunwoo's kindness, the way he listened without interrupting, the comfort of being seen without being dissected. And yet, Bruno's presence, unseen but unmistakable, had wrapped itself around her chest like a tightening wire. She typed back a single word. "Fine." They met an hour later in the studio, a place that carried too much history to feel neutral. The air between them crackled the moment Rosé stepped inside. Bruno was leaning against the piano, arms crossed, eyes dark and unreadable. "So," he said, breaking the silence with a sharp laugh that held no humor, "nice dinner." Rosé stiffened. "You were there." "Hard to miss," Bruno shot back. "Candlelight wine, laughter, you looked happy." "That's not fair," she replied, her voice rising. "You don't get to interrogate me like that." Bruno pushed off the piano and stepped closer. "I do. After everything after all the nights you said you didn't want anyone else in your space." "Don't twist this," Rosé snapped. "You disappeared, Bruno. You shut me out and then act surprised when I don't sit around waiting." Silence slammed into the room, heavy and unforgiving. "That's what this is," he said quietly. "You think I left because I didn't care." Rosé laughed bitterly. "You left because it was easier, because writing another song was safer than having a real conversation." Bruno's control finally cracked. "You think I don't hear you in everything I write? You think I don't wake up reaching for someone who's not there?" Her breath hitched, but she didn't look away. "Then why didn't you fight?" The question landed harder than any accusation. Bruno opened his mouth, then closed it again. The truth pressed against his chest, ugly and exposed. "Because I was terrified," he admitted. "Terrified that if I fought, I'd still lose you." Rosé's shoulders sagged, anger giving way to something rower. "I was terrified too," she said softly. "Every time you pulled away, I wondered if I was just another verse you move on from." They stood there, inches apart, the studio humming with unsaid words. Bruno reached out, stopping just short of touching her arm. "And him?" he asked, voice tight. "Is he something?" Rosé hesitated, and that hesitation spoke volumes. "He's kind," she said carefully. "He listens. He doesn't make me feel like I'm competing with your demons." The admission burned, but it was honest, and honesty was something they'd both avoided for too long. Bruno nodded slowly. "I don't hate him," he said, surprising even himself. "I hate what I let happen." Rosé finally met his eyes, tears glistening but unshed. "Then stop running," she whispered. "Even if it's not with me, stop running from yourself." The words stripped him bare. Bruno turned away, hands gripping the edge of the piano as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. When he spoke again, his voice was steady but changed. "I can't promise you forever," he said, "but I can promise you truth, no more disappearing." Rosé exhaled, a long, shaky breath. "That's all I ever wanted." They didn't touch. They didn't reconcile. Instead, they stood in the fragile space between past and possibility, where anger had burned itself down to embers and something quieter, more dangerous, began to grow, understanding. When Rosé finally turned to leave, she paused at the door. "For what it's worth," she said, without looking back, "that dinner didn't change how I feel. It just showed me how tired I am of pretending I don't feel anything at all." The door closed softly behind her. Bruno sat down at the piano, fingers pressing the keys with purpose this time. The melody that emerged was still painful, still unresolved, but it moved forward. And for the first time since that candle-lit dinner, the night felt less like an ending and more like a reckoning neither of them could avoid. The knock came just as Rosé was slipping out of her heels, the sound sharp enough to slice through the quiet of her apartment. She froze, heart stuttering, already knowing who it was before she reached the door. When she opened it, Cha Eunwoo stood there, rain-damp hair curling at his temples, concern etched across his face. "You left the studio," he said softly. "You didn't answer my messages." Rosé swallowed. "I needed air." He stepped inside, the door closing behind him with a finality that made her pulse spike. The room smelled faintly of lavender and city rain, a fragile calm that didn't match the storm in her chest. "Was it him?" Cha Eunwoo asked, not accusing, just honest. Rosé let out a shaky breath. "Yes." Silence stretched, taut as a wire. Then he nodded once, as if confirming something he'd already known. "I figured," he said. "You don't look at someone the way you look at him unless there's unfinished fire." "That doesn't mean what you think," Rosé shot back, sharper than she intended. "You don't get to reduce it to something simple." "I'm not," he replied, voice firm now. "I'm asking where I stand." The question landed like a challenge. Rosé turned away, pressing her palms to the kitchen counter. "I don't know," she admitted, "and that's the truth." Cha Eunwoo's jaw tightened. "I won't be a distraction," he said. "I won't be the safe option you hide behind while you're still bleeding for someone else." She spun around, eyes blazing. "You think this is easy for me? You think I enjoy being pulled apart like this?" "I think," he said, stepping closer, "that you deserve someone who shows up without being chased." The words echoed, cruel in their accuracy. Rosé laughed, brittle and wet with unshed tears. "He showed up tonight." "And then," Cha Eunwoo pressed, "did he choose you or did he choose his fear again?" Before she could answer, her phone buzzed on the table. Bruno's name lit the screen like a provocation. Cha Eunwoo saw it. Of course he did. "Answer it," he said quietly. "Or don't, but don't pretend this isn't deciding something." Rosé stared at the phone, fingers trembling. Finally, she picked it up. "What do you want, Bruno?" she said, the words spilling out raw. "I need to see you," Bruno's voice came through, rough and urgent. "Not tomorrow, not later, now." Cha Eunwoo laughed softly, shaking his head. "There it is." Rosé closed her eyes. "I can't keep doing this," she said into the phone. "You don't get to pull me whenever it suits you." There was a pause, heavy with everything Bruno hadn't said earlier. "I'm not pulling," he replied. "I'm standing still for once. If you don't come, I'll understand, but if you do, it has to be real." Her throat tightened. She looked at Cha Eunwoo, whose expression was calm but wounded. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He stepped back, giving her space she hadn't asked for but desperately needed. "Go," he said. "Find out what you're fighting for. Just don't come back pretending nothing changed." Rosé grabbed her coat and left, the night swallowing her whole as she hailed a cab. The city blurred past the window, neon lights streaking like fractured thoughts. By the time she reached the studio, her heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might crack her ribs. Bruno was waiting outside, packing. When he saw her, relief and fear collided in his eyes. "You came," he said. "I almost didn't," she replied, "so don't waste this." They went inside, the door slamming shut behind them. Bruno turned to face her, no piano between them this time, no instruments to hide behind. "I called because I realized something," he said. "Watching you with him, it broke me, but it also showed me what I've been doing wrong." "And what's that?" Rosé challenged. "I've been loving you like a song I can pause," he said, voice cracking. "I thought you'd always be there when I pressed play again." Rosé's eyes filled. "I'm not a pause button, Bruno." "I know," he said quickly, "and I'm done treating you like one." She crossed her arms, defensive but listening. "Words are easy." "Then don't believe my words," he replied. "Believe what I'm willing to lose." "What does that mean?" she asked. Bruno took a breath. "It means I'm not asking you to choose tonight. I'm asking you to choose yourself. If that leads you away from me, I'll survive. But if there's still something here," he stepped closer, "I'll fight without disappearing." Rosé searched his face, looking for the cracks, the excuses. Instead, she saw fear laid bare, unmasked and unashamed. "You scare me," she admitted, "because you feel like home and a wildfire at the same time." He smiled sadly. "You scare me too." They stood there, the air vibrating with everything unsaid. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, a low warning. Rosé finally spoke, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "I won't promise you anything," she said, "but I won't lie to myself anymore." Bruno nodded. "That's enough for now." Somewhere across the city, Cha Eunwoo sat alone, staring at his phone, replaying Rosé's last look at him. He knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. And as Rosé stepped back into the rain-slicked street after leaving the studio, she realized with a sharp, aching clarity that the dinner had only been the spark. The real fire had just begun. The headlines exploded before sunrise. Rosé saw them first, glowing on her phone in the half-light of morning, her heart dropping before she even finished reading the words. A blurred photo taken from across the street showed her stepping out of Bruno's studio, rain clinging to her hair, Bruno just behind her, his hand hovering too close to her back. The caption was ruthless, confident, and wrong in all the ways that mattered. Rosé and Bruno Mars reignite secret romance amid rising tension with Cha Eunwoo. She let the phone slip onto the bed, as if it had burned her. Across town, Bruno stared at the same headline, his jaw tightening so hard it ached. His phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Managers, publicists, numbers he hadn't saved but already knew by heart. He ignored them all, his mind replaying Rosé's face from the night before, tired, brave, unwilling to hide anymore. "This is my fault," he murmured, rubbing his temples. By noon, the situation had turned volatile. Rosé walked into a scheduled rehearsal only to be met with silence that felt louder than shouting. Whispers followed her movements. She kept her head high, but every step felt like walking through broken glass. When she reached the practice room, Cha Eunwoo was already there. He was sitting on the floor, back against the mirror, arms resting on his knees. He didn't look angry. That somehow hurt more. "So it's true," he said calmly. "You went back to him." Rosé dropped her bag. "It's not what they're saying." "That's not an answer," he replied, finally looking up. His eyes were steady, sharp. "Did you or did you not leave with him?" "Yes," she said, forcing the word out. "But not for the reasons they're implying." Cha Eunwoo laughed quietly, shaking his head. "They never care about reasons, only damage." "I didn't plan this," Rosé snapped. "I didn't call the cameras, I didn't leak anything." "I know," he said, "but you still chose to go." The word chose echoed in the room, heavy and accusatory. "Don't do that," she said, voice cracking. "Don't turn this into something simple." "I'm not," he replied, standing now, his height and calm somehow more intimidating than anger. "I'm turning it into something honest." Rosé crossed her arms, defensive. "Honest would mean admitting you knew this could happen." Cha Eunwoo exhaled slowly. "Yes, I did." He stepped closer. "And honest would also mean admitting you ran back to him the moment he stopped being afraid." "That's not fair," she shot back. "You don't know what it's like between us." "I know exactly what it's like," he said, voice rising for the first time. "It's unfinished, it's loud, and it's destroying everything in its path." Her eyes burned. "Then why are you still standing here?" "Because I wanted to see if you'd look at me and tell me you're done with him," he said quietly. "And you can't." The truth of it settled between them, like dust after an explosion. Meanwhile, Bruno finally answered his phone. "Do you have any idea what kind of fire you just started?" His manager barked. "Yes," Bruno replied evenly, "and I'm not running." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "You don't get it. Brands are nervous. Fans are divided. This could cost you." "I know what it could cost me," Bruno interrupted, "and I'm still here." He hung up before he could be persuaded into silence again. An hour later, he was at Rosé's door. She opened it already angry, words loaded and ready. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he said, "but I needed to see you before this turns into something we don't recognize." She stepped aside, letting him in. The tension ignited instantly. "You knew this would happen," she accused. "You knew the moment I walked out with you, they'd tear it apart." "And you still came," he shot back. "So don't put this all on me." She slammed the door behind him. I came because I was tired of lying to myself, not because I wanted a scandal. Bruno stepped closer. Then stop pretending this is just a misunderstanding. Her eyes flashed. What do you want from me, Bruno? A confession? A promise? A public declaration that ruins everything? I want you to stop acting like caring about me is a mistake, he said, voice breaking. Because every time you do, you cut deeper than the headlines ever could. Silence swallowed them. Rosé turned away, pressing her hand to her chest. I'm tired, she whispered. I'm tired of being the center of a war I never asked for. Bruno softened. Then let me stand in front of you this time. Let me take the hit. She laughed bitterly. You don't get to be noble now. Watch me, he said. Her phone buzzed again. Cha Eunwoo's name. Bruno saw it. You should answer. She looked between the phone and Bruno, tears spilling freely now. This is tearing me apart. I know, he said gently. That's why I won't ask you to choose me today. She stared at him, stunned. What? I won't trap you with ultimatums, he said. Because if you choose me, I want it to be because you want me, not because I'm louder than the chaos. Her breath shook, and if I do? Bruno swallowed. Then I'll finally learn how to let go without disappearing. That broke her. She sank onto the couch, covering her face, sobs escaping despite her effort to contain them. Bruno knelt in front of her, not touching, just present. This is the hardest part, he said softly. When love stops being romantic and starts being real. That night, Rosé answered Cha Eunwoo's call. I'm not ready, she told him, voice raw. Not for him, not for you, not for the world. There was a pause. Then Cha Eunwoo spoke, steady but wounded. Then don't rush, but understand this, I won't wait forever. After the call ended, Rosé sat in silence, the weight of 3 hearts pressing down on her. Outside, the city buzzed with speculation, judgment, and noise. Inside that room, something far more dangerous was unfolding, not a scandal, but a reckoning. Because love, once exposed, never goes back into hiding. And this time, none of them were looking away. The city didn't calm down after the scandal broke. It sharpened. Rosé felt it the moment she stepped outside again, eyes lingering too long, phones lifted a second too quickly, whispers slicing the air behind polite smiles. She had lived under attention for years, but this was different. This wasn't about music or fashion. This was about her heart, laid bare and debated by strangers who spoke as if they owned it. She arrived at the private rooftop lounge just after sunset, the sky bruised purple and gold. She had agreed to meet Cha Eunwoo there because silence had started to feel like cruelty. He was already waiting, hands resting on the railing, the city glowing beneath him. When he turned, there was no anger on his face, only a controlled stillness that frightened her more than rage ever could. You look tired, he said. I am, Rosé replied honestly. They stood side by side without touching, the wind threading through the space between them. I read everything, Cha Eunwoo continued. Every headline, every theory. He laughed softly, humorless. According to the internet, I'm either a villain or a placeholder. Rosé winced. I never meant for you to be dragged into this. I know, he said, but intention doesn't erase impact. She turned to him. Say what you need to say, please. He faced her fully now. I fell for you because you're honest, he said. Even when it's inconvenient, but honesty without courage becomes hesitation, and hesitation hurts people. Her throat tightened. Are you saying goodbye? I'm saying I won't compete, he answered calmly. Not with him, not with your past. I deserve to be chosen without doubt. Tears slid down her cheeks. You don't deserve this. No, he agreed gently, but I accept reality. He reached out, brushing her hand once, soft, deliberate, final. If one day you're free of ghosts and you still think of me, then find me, he said. If not, I'll still be grateful I knew you. And just like that, he walked away, leaving behind something clean and devastating in its dignity. Rosé stayed there long after he was gone, crying quietly as the city lights blurred. Losing Cha Eunwoo didn't explode like the headlines. It collapsed inward, heavy and silent. That night, she went to the studio unannounced. Bruno was there, sitting on the floor beside the piano, surrounded by crumpled pages. He looked up sharply when he saw her, fear and hope colliding in his eyes. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "I know," she replied, "but I am." She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, as if bracing herself. "I let him go." Bruno stood slowly. "Because of me." "Because of myself," she corrected. "Because I realized something tonight." He waited, saying nothing. "I keep blaming timing, fear, pressure," Rosé continued. "But the truth is simpler and uglier. I've been afraid to choose you because choosing you means risking everything." Bruno's voice trembled, and choosing him did. "It did," she admitted. "But with him the risk was quiet, with you it's a fire." He stepped closer, eyes shining. "Fire can warm or destroy." "I know," she said. "That's why I ran and why I came back." Silence filled the room, thick and electric. Bruno swallowed. "I need to know something," he said. "If we do this, really do this, I won't disappear again, but I won't survive half-love either." Rosé lifted her chin, tears still falling but her gaze steady. "Then don't accept it." He exhaled shakily. "Say it." "I'm choosing you," she said. "Not the fantasy, not the songs, you. The difficult, imperfect, terrifying reality of you." Bruno closed the distance between them, resting his forehead against hers without touching. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Neither do I," she replied. "That's the point." They didn't kiss right away. They stood there, breathing each other in, letting the weight of their choice settle. When Bruno finally wrapped his arms around her, it wasn't desperate. It was grounding, steady, real. The world didn't magically forgive them. The headlines didn't disappear. Fans argued, critics speculated, opportunities shifted. Some doors closed. But others opened. Months later, Rosé stood backstage as Bruno finished a new song in front of a roaring crowd. It wasn't a love anthem wrapped in fantasy. It was raw, stripped, unapologetic. When he reached the final note, he looked straight at her. No hiding, no fear. After the show, she met him in the quiet corridor behind the stage. "That song," she said, voice thick, "it was terrifying." He smiled. "Good." She took his hand, squeezing once. "So were you." They laughed softly, leaning into each other as the noise faded behind them. The dinner that once shattered everything had become a beginning instead of an ending, not because it was misunderstood, but because it forced the truth into the light. Love didn't save them. Choice did. And for the first time, neither of them looked away.